This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry with agriculture broadcasters Orion Samuelson and Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH and your local Case IH dealer.
Across the country, farmers are working to get their crops planted, and they're making progress, but still running behind that 5-year average. Hello, folks. Welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio this week, but later on in the show, we'll be hearing from both Max Armstrong and Orion Samuelson. Before we do, wanted to get a look at planting progress across the country, and it is still slow. Growers in corn planting estates are currently about 7% behind the 5-year average, with the Dakotas currently running the furthest behind. South Dakota has 11% of their corn in the ground, North Dakota only 1%, and that's as of last Monday. We'll get these stats updated on Monday when USDA releases their next planting progress and crop conditions report. But we've also got to grow those crops that we're getting in the ground, and to that end, agronomy matters. And we're going to take a turn to Dyersville, Iowa for Agronomy Week. It's underway at the Field of Dreams movie site. Clint Chaffer is there. Clint?
It's Agronomy Week, and we're coming to you from one of the most famous fields in the world, the Field of Dreams movie site. Join us today as we talk about agronomy, baseball, and the numbers that tie them together. All the advanced analytics that are happening in baseball, right? All those different pieces that they were looking at, different ways of looking at a player to figure out, who they want on the team and how they're picking all that.
Just like a baseball player trying to get a better batting average or improve their average, or all the things that they like to track. Farmers track numbers too.
Clint, I agree with Lance. One of the things I think our head a lot of times is focusing on the home runs and the grand slams when we really need to be focusing on the base hits. And some of those things, like a base hit would be just timing of application, making sure that's correct.
Holly, what's the number one thing that you're looking at for this season?
One of the biggest numbers I'm looking at right now is what our rainfall has been.
The calendar date's a number that we worry about, the soil temperature, the amount of moisture that we've had, how good of a stand do we get when we're able to get in the field, impacting the potential yield of our crop.
If we get that plant date on soybeans in as early as possible, that affects 3 numbers. Number of nodes, number of pods, and then the seeds per pods.
What's maybe one number that you think is, maybe the most important number as we roll into planting?
It's always back to yield for us in Illinois.
One of the numbers that right now I'm really concerned about with soybeans is what is our final stand.
Really everything you do to produce a crop, is going to relate back to a number somehow.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. And now it's time to talk the markets. Joining me this week is Naomi Bloom of Total Farm Marketing. Naomi, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Boy, the wheat market certainly found some weakness this week. Naomi, what happened?
It's just the combination of hearing that the Russians might allow for exports to be coming out of Ukraine. And so just that hope of that happening is what pushed the wheat prices lower. Plus last week, the wheat market had tested the previous highs that we had back when the whole Ukraine war got going. So that combination of things, we didn't have any reason to get markets to go through that resistance area. We're seeing the pullback now. Now, if we come back into the market next week and Russia is not being helpful about getting those exports moving, then the wheat market would have a recovery bounce. But we still have 50% of the spring wheat crop that's not in the ground yet. And the winter wheat crop, of course, is still rated very poor as they're going to be starting harvest down there soon. So seeing the pullback, it was kind of, worthwhile. It was warranted from the standpoint of we had gone up so much. But on the bigger picture, we still have lower supplies here in the United States, and that's not being fixed anytime soon.
Yeah, overall demand situation or supply situation situation is still rather tight. Naomi, similar story playing out in the corn market. Was this week's weakness in corn just as a result of spillover from the wheat market?
Absolutely it was. So again, hopes that maybe there's going to be exports out of Ukraine, and the hope then, of course, is that some of that corn can be exported out. Now, if that doesn't happen next week, the corn market rallies. Corn also saw a little bit of a technical sell-off this week, too. Some support levels were violated, and that pushed the selling down. And so we're at a point where we have really good value. The July corn contract so far has good support at $7.50. December corn has good support at $7. And still we have 25% of the corn crop that's not planted, and we are coming up against, some of those prevent plant deadlines in the northern states. So again, not out of the woodwork yet here. We have some price volatility to come because corn, just like wheat, we're low on supplies, and it is still a friendly story in the big picture.
We're low on supplies globally, Naomi. Are we seeing exporters take bigger chunks of U.S. corn?
We had in the previous couple of weeks. Things have slowed down just a little bit, but we still continue to see China in the picture. And China this week did say that they wanted to try to open some of the export ability out of Brazil, so that way they could help have some product, because they're also concerned about Ukraine. But I think China also is quite aware that we're not going to have a record crop here, and we're not going to have an early harvest here, so they're looking to secure supplies. I don't think you can snub our market and say that China's not going to buy U.S. corn. That's not the issue. The issue is that China needs corn, China needs feed, because they didn't have a big crop last year either. And so again, like you said, the world is low on food supplies.
Naomi, you touched on the slow planting pace we're seeing in corn in this country. Do you think we're opening the door for more bean acres to go in the ground as this corn planting gets further delayed?
It could be, and I got to tell you, I'm not totally sure. As I'm talking with clients, there's still hope that they're going to stick with their regular rotations that they're wanting to do. There's talk that in some of the northern states that there might be some last-minute switching going on just out of necessity. So it'll be a fight to the finish until the end, and of course we won't know until the June 30th report.
In the meanwhile, Naomi, demand for beans has been very strong. Do you expect the domestic crush to stay engaged here in the months ahead?
Yes, I do, very much so. The demand is strong there. We've seen it on USDA reports. They've already said that for the next crop year, there's going to be even stronger domestic demand for crush. And then it was just announced that even more of those crushing facilities are coming online in this country. So it's a big new demand picture that's going to be staying, and it's really important for our producers. And the crush plants are going throughout the Midwest. So there is new demand for many producers all over the Midwest, which should keep cash prices firm as well.
All right. Do you want to pull the trigger on selling some November beans quite yet?
I would say if we get a recovery bounce here into early June, which seasonally usually happens, then you're going to want to definitely pull the trigger at that point.
All right. Keep an eye on those markets and grab those opportunities when they come. We'll be back for more in just a moment with Naomi Bloom of Total Farm Marketing. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. And we're back talking markets with Naomi Bloom of Total Farm Marketing, our native Wisconsinian, which means, Naomi, I want to talk to you about the dairy industry. Producers have been struggling. These high grain prices are hurting those margins. What's the outlook for dairy?
Well, margins, yeah, they are absolutely struggling. A lot of the break-evens for some of these producers, we're talking low $20 for break-evens, and that's the reality of the situation. The industry, though, the producers have gotten really smart, and they're actually not expanding anymore. And so that is part of the reason why milk production on the reports has actually been trending lower for over 6 months. That's been a reason that the milk prices have stayed elevated, because production is down. In Wisconsin, I have only heard of one dairy, and I am surrounded by dairy farms where I live. Only one dairy is looking to expand. It's not just margins, it's of course having labor, and there's hard to come by these days. So we have good demand, though, for our milk markets. We have exceptional demand right now for butter exports and for cheese exports, and domestic cheese production is actually starting to increase. Of course, I'm surrounded by cheese plants right where I live too. My husband works in the cheese industry, so the markets have been really good for that. So the outlook is strong demand, both domestically and with our export markets, and production is trending lower. So I think prices probably stay firm. The market doesn't at this time have a reason to get over $25 for the Class 3 futures market, but in the bigger picture, $24 seems to be supporting us pretty well right now, and I think we're going to probably see prices hold steady here for a while till we get a better idea of what our grain prices might do and getting a better idea of pasture conditions, and especially for hay, as we're going to be working on that first crop hay.
Yeah, that is a great point. Hay concerns will be upon us very, very quickly, I think, for a lot of producers. You talk about the margins shrinking on the dairy side, Naomi, that's just as true on the cattle side, be they ranchers or cattle feeders. Last week saw the cattle on feed report be released. How did the market react?
Well, the market actually shrugged off the report. The report was a little bit more bearish against expectations, with supplies a little bit bigger. And we had pretty much thought we had priced all of that in and that the news was out there. So the market had been trending lower, and then the report was bearish, but we had a friendly reaction off of a bearish report. So the market had a nice recovery bounce, and now we'll probably see the cattle futures prices start to work sideways for the short term. Cash markets just kind of continue to be in a rut. They're in a little bit of a lull, but the demand actually is starting to pick up. Of course, it's grilling season. Our export market continues to be hot. It's just that for the short term in these front month cattle, we have a lot of supplies for the short term. Deferred contracts continue to be a friendlier picture for the looking out for 2023. And when we're looking at feeder cattle lately, with the grain prices falling off, feeder cattle finally had a reason to work a little bit higher. But now I think they too are going to start to go into a sideways pattern. So a little bit of some moving and shaking here to start the week, but now we're probably going to see things quiet down a little bit.
Lean hog markets, Naomi, they have been at elevated prices for the past 12 or 18 months and starting to come off a little bit. What do you think the trend is here in the hog market?
Well, we did see a classic head and shoulders formation on the hog charts. And then about a week or two ago, we finally hit the downside target of the head and shoulders formation. And that's what traders are waiting for before they came back in and bought. And so for the last week, we saw the hog prices start to work higher. And now just a little bit of a pullback this week. Cutout values have been improving. Demand it's okay. It's all right, for this time of year. And we're going to probably see it pick up with summer grilling. But I think right now for the hog market, sort of just like cattle, going into a sideways fashion until we see a little bit more fresh news. But I think the low is in. All
right, low is in. We'll see what this summer brings. It's Naomi Bloom of Total Farm Marketing.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
Increasingly, more and more of our lives are dictated by devices that we need to keep charged. Well, Chad Colby has faced that issue, as you might imagine, and he's found some new tools to help manage that battery on the go.
I love technology that makes things easier. Maybe it gets rid of some clutter. Check out this new tool from Milwaukee. It's a 175-watt power supply. Now, it's designed to clip right on top of an M18 size battery. You can see it's got two plugs for USB, type A and C. There's a button to turn that on or off. And then below it, it's got the one that we all kind of are interested in, and that's the 120-volt plug. Now, you can see I turned it on, and here I am. To give you an example, I'm going to plug in the power supply from my smartphone. But how cool is that? Maybe in your pickup truck, on your farm, in your house. It also has a clip on the side of it, so if you need to take it remotely, pretty cool device considering most of us have cordless batteries sitting around. So it's kind of handy. What if the power goes out? Those kind of things. I love it. It's $100. It's brand new. And then how many of us fight this mess every day? And that's the mess of cords and charges it takes to power up all our cordless personal equipment. For me, that's AirPods, my watch, and phone. And I'm telling you, I've fought this mess for years, and I'm glad to say I'm done. I found a company called Blue Bolt, and they make a charger that utilizes all the wireless technology out there now. And you can see me right here loading the device. There's my AirPods. I'm going to put the watch on. You'll see me right here point at those little green indicators on the front. That's really kind of handy because it tells you that the devices are charging. So there's 3 lights, one for each position. You clip on your smartphone, and you can see right there in the upper right corner, it's all charging. Comes in a couple different colors, and get this, it does work for Android as well. It's very low cost. It's not that expensive. But here's the best part. Look at how it completely uncluttered that area, and it works so well. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Well, thank you, Chad. I have never seen a device like that to plug into the top of a battery. And as somebody who has driven around in pickup trucks with those batteries just scattered everywhere, that is a product that makes a lot of sense. But now, folks, we are returning to Dyersville, Iowa, where Agronomy Week at the Field of Dreams movie site is in full swing. Now we're going over to Clint Chaffer.
Welcome back to Agronomy Week here at the beautiful Field of Dreams movie site. I'm your host, Clint Chaffer, and today we're going to be talking about baseball, agronomy, and all things breeding. As you think about all these different changes over 30 years, what do you think, in your opinion, are the #1 changes?
The yields 30 years ago versus today, the yield potential, the number of bushels we're taking off of a farm today is just incredible. So if I think about our yields today in the geography that I cover, I think we're growing more bushels off of less water. The other thing is that we're planting corn in areas that 30 years ago we never would have dreamed of planting corn.
One of the biggest advancements in breeding, especially in cotton, has been pest management. We've seen traits like Bogard come through and be a major game changer for us with pest management.
As I think about the last 30 years, really we've just improved the agronomics overall because we have improved our genetic rate of gain. 30 years ago, if we experienced a drought, we would have seen a lot of barren ears. And we have the technology now, we have that stress tolerance now to yield through some of that stress. We are better at selecting which genes we want to put into plants now. And so in the last 30 years, you know, the technology that we've used to create GMOs, to create biotech traits for us, has really made pretty big improvements as well. So you think about how long it's taken to get the first biotech trait versus what we have now. You think of our pipeline, it's just bam, 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 one new trait right after the other because of all of those breeding techniques that have changed in the last 30 years.
Well, thank you, Clint. And folks, that website again is agronomyweek.com. And stay with us. Later on in This Week in Agribusiness, we'll be talking with Adrienne DeSutter. May Mental Health Awareness Month is coming to an end, but she's got some thoughts on PTSD. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Agribusiness. As the calendar gets ready to flip to June, school districts around the country are having their school years come to an end, and that means we're seeing some changes at state FFA leadership organizations, and one of those groups is Ohio FFA. They wrapped up their convention on May 6th, which meant it was the end of the term for Dawson Osborne, who has served as the state reporter for the Ohio FFA. Dawson joins us now. Dawson, tell us, what were some of the highlights of your last year serving as state reporter for the Ohio FFA?
Thank you. For one of the most obvious highlights that I would have to go with was our state convention on May 5th and 6th. We had Melissa Radke and Hunter Pinky, two outstanding speakers, come. We had our national FFA president, Cole Bearlocker, and our retiring address of our state president, Jake Sikowski. It was just an exciting experience for all of us to see the first convention, in-person convention in Ohio in 3 years. And for Ohio FFA to bring the energy in that fashion, it truly was an amazing experience. I've really loved every second of getting to meet with kids and learn about, you know, the diversity of agriculture that exists in Ohio. But getting to see that moment for the first time in 3 years for Ohio FFA members to meet in one place and for them to be so energized about it, it truly was an amazing experience.
That is a landmark. Getting back together, that face-to-face time with the other members is so important. Dawson, as you think back to your younger days, what was it that prompted you to join FFA in the first place?
So actually, when I was born, my dad was an agricultural educator here at my home high school of Lynchburg Clay High School. Now, that is a profession that he left when I was around 6 years old. But, you know, I just knew that it was something that I was going to be a part of when I went into high school. Ever since I've been eligible through 4-H, I have shown cattle at state and county fairs each year. And to me, FFA seemed like a logical decision to join when I was a freshman in high school. And just because of my involvement in cattle, but I've really just found so much more out of it. getting to see all these other contests and leadership experiences has offered me, it was something I really never imagined that first year when I stepped into the FFA classroom, but I'm so glad that I was able to find it.
Dawson, when did you decide that FFA leadership was a direction you wanted to go? Was that early on in your FFA career?
So I think early on in my FFA career, I saw people like our chapter officers and our chapter presidents and vice presidents and the way they conducted themselves and the way they felt like, it was an honor to be a part of all these contests and to be a leader of our chapter. It really inspired me to take up that level of leadership within our chapter. The next year I ran for a chapter office and I served as Sentinel for 2 years. And, as I got older, I started to think about state office and what that would involve becoming. And between my junior and senior year, I was able to have some experiences that really showed me why I wanted to go out and serve Ohio FFA in a leadership role. At the end of my senior year, I was elected to this position. I was elected virtually, and we got to transition in person about a month into my term. And realistically, it was just an awesome experience to be able to share my story with FFA members across the state. And I'm so happy that I did make that decision to, get involved in leadership, both at my chapter and now the state level with Ohio FFA.
Dawson, before we let you go, what does the future hold? What are you doing next year?
So I currently major in political science on a pre-law track at Ohio State. That's where I'm looking to go towards graduate. I will graduate in the fall of 2023, and I plan to attend law school afterwards. And I'm just really excited for, to get to learn all those experiences about what it will take to become a lawyer in this world and to be able to serve in that profession well as keep my family's cattle herd running here at home.
All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck. Dawson Osborne, past state reporter for the Ohio FFA.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
Every day I'm reminded that we live in a fast-changing world. Let me share with you a couple of stories that crossed my desk this week. First of all, the BBC quoted the Ukrainian First Deputy on Monday saying the international community should help secure safe passage for food export vessels in a corridor out of the port city of Odessa to help Ukraine and to avoid world hunger. It would take us 5, 6, 7 years to export all of these agricultural products by railroad, so now it's extremely important for us to unblock the seaports. And we need a guarantee from partners. Of course, it's a defense guarantee, a security guarantee. And then another story. The Animal Feed Manufacturers Group, FEFAC, said in a note, pig and poultry producers in Europe are likely to cut back this year because of high feed costs, declining demand, and bird flu outbreaks. Pig feed production seen down 4.2%, poultry down 3%, and cattle down 1.6%. Overall, compound feed production expected to decline 2.9%. Different stories, but they all point to one thing. It's a fast-changing world. Be safe, be well. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
Thank you, Orion. And folks, that rapidly changing world we live in can be a source of stress, and that's something we think about during Mental Health Awareness Month. Max will have a conversation with Adrian DeSutter when we return.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Folks, thanks for joining us today for This Week in Agribusiness. We appreciate being a part of your weekend. May is coming to an end, which means we're coming to the end of Mental Health Awareness Month, but it's not over yet. And of course, it's always worthwhile to think about the issues that we grapple with mental health-wise, and Max did that with our friend Adrian DeSutter.
We're wrapping up our Mental Health Awareness Month visits with Adrienne DeSutter, who farms in central Illinois. She and her husband and their family, and she also has advised other farm families on this issue of mental health, getting more attention these days. And this Memorial Day weekend, it occurs to me, Adrienne, that we have so many military veterans who live in rural America, many involved in farming. This can be, in its own way, this weekend, a real challenge for many. It's not a happy vacation weekend for many. It's a weekend of remembrance and for some sadness.
Absolutely. I think there are, as we kind of were discussing earlier, that idea that a lot of military folks come from rural areas. I will never forget, as a school counselor, working with military coming in to do recruiting, and how many youth really felt like they found their purpose when they met with those military advisors. So it's a very honorable thing that we see people going into, but absolutely can be a struggle. I was just reading an article this morning actually on the amount of Army folks in particular, in this specific article, who had died by suicide, and how that was not only impacting those people and their families, but the entire military base and that entire branch of the Army. But because people really, suicide doesn't just impact one person, it is something that a lot of people pay attention to. So it's absolutely, mental health is something that is critical to be talking about along the lines of agriculture, but also in the military perspective as well.
The PTSD burden is a very real one, and it's a long-lasting one, it seems. I remember going to the airport one morning, and a neighbor of ours was coming down the road. I knew him, a military veteran, and I rolled down the window and said, "Hey, what are you doing, pal?" I knew he hadn't been out drinking. He said, "No, I'm just on patrol, Mr. Max, just checking out the neighborhood. I can't sleep." And it was a reminder, a very powerful reminder to me of what some of these folks go through.
Absolutely, yes. There's, it's really hard, I think, to fathom what it must be like to live with something like PTSD, to make those constant connections with sounds or things that you see, things that you hear, smell, anything, in any way that your senses can work, can function, can relate, can bring you back to a time that was a frightening time, or a worrisome time, or a time where you didn't really know what was going on, or a chaotic time. So we make these connections now with things that we have experienced in the past. I want to take this opportunity to mention that PTSD, we do connect with military, because that is, definitely the prevalence of PTSD in military folks is quite high. But anyone can experience PTSD. It may be the loss of a loved one that you have that we see throughout the rest of your life, the way that impacts you. It can be terrifying experiences that you went through, in your childhood, or even, for me, I know I struggled with one of my births, one of my deliveries of one of my children. And so just knowing how that continues to impact my mind in a PTSD related way helps me at least relate to people that are really struggling with that. But it's one of those things where it's hard to gain control of your emotions, your frustration, your anger, your sadness, because of the way that it brings you back again to that hard time that you were going through. So definitely a mental health condition that we want to make sure we continue to advocate for.
Veteran or not, sometimes it's a struggle for some to get that help they need. But I've had folks tell me they delayed it. It was one of the worst things they could do. That the most important thing they did was to finally take that step and to help lift that burden some. It can't always be easily lifted, as you've pointed out in the past, but there is hope.
Absolutely. There's a staggering statistic out there, and I'm not sure how old this statistic is, but they say that people with a mental health condition like PTSD, like depression, anxiety, the average amount of time before someone experiences the start of those symptoms between when they actually have a diagnosis or start to get help for those things is 10 years. That is a long time carrying those weights without support. Without the support that you really need. So we really need to do a better job of, again, recognizing that these things are real conditions and that there are real treatments that can make a world of difference. I will never forget a conversation I had with a farmer who said to me, I realize it's taboo, but therapy and medication changed my life. It saved my marriage. I only wish I would have started sooner. And I've got loved ones who will tell you the same thing, that once they finally pick up that heavy phone to make that call to get help, it is amazing how life-changing it really can be. It's a process. It doesn't happen after one session or one medication. It's not an overnight fix by any means, but that process makes a world of difference. And so if you're someone out there who is on the fence or realizing you need to get that help, I really encourage you to move forward with that.
Thank you so much for sharing those words of hope with us this weekend, Adrian. You've been an immense help again this month of May during Mental Health Awareness Month. We sure appreciate it. Hope you folks have a good growing season on your farm in Illinois.
Thank you so much.
Adrian DeSutter joining us here again this weekend.
Thank you, Max, and thank you, Adrian, for your insights during this Mental Health Awareness Month. Folks, if you're looking for more resources for mental health on the farm, Farm Bureau has set up the farmstateofmind.org website, and they'll have a webinar on Tuesday.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, now it's time to check in on the weather. Joining me is Greg Solier. And Greg, Pacific Northwest, that's where all these storm systems kind of get their start. What's this next week look like?
A quieter weather picture as the week wears on out there in the Pacific Northwest. A little cooler than you would typically see for this point in mid to late May. But at the same time, you keep those temperatures down. I know it's slower crop growth and development. You certainly minimize an early tap into runoff off the Cascades, where we've seen moisture improvement and points on west from there. So still this upper air trough in the Pacific Northwest. The highest peak still get a little snow. How about that snow about a week or so ago around the Denver area? At least it was moisture into the central high plains areas, and still a little nip in the air across the Dakotas. The jet stream flattens out. We call it zonal west to east, even a little ridging going on. So the return to some sunshine, quieter weather, mild environs across the central plains, up across the Dakotas. Maybe a little opportunity for additional field work. It's been there, Red River Valley of the North, surprisingly, where we've made some decent progress. But in the weeks to come here, he says, opportunities across the Corn Belt. Here's the next weak weather system ashore in the Pacific Northwest. Southern reflection of this trough here across the southwestern parts of the country. No organized precip. We wait until later June, July to get that monsoon season going. Yeah, we've had storms last week. Nice to see moisture here. Too much of it off to the east, and a propensity for severe weather early in the week from Nebraska southward again into West Texas. Cotton, kind of a weak weather system with cooler air into the valleys of California. Any severe weather potential down through Texas the mid to late portions of the week. Quiet across much of the west and southwest. Here's your factoid. 1.8 million acres, Mike, of damage, scorched earth, if you will, from the fires across the west. That's 2 times the 10-year average in the western states. Amazing.
Boy, that is something else. That dryness is incredible. Greg, growers in the central part of the U.S. would love to get their corn planting wrapped up. Does it look like that opportunity might be there this week?
This week it goes back to the eastern and southern corn belt. Last week it was across the west and north, and surprisingly through the upper Midwest. But here's a windy weather system across the plains, and heat and humidity and summertime. And look at this dome of sinking air. It's hot. It's 90-degree air across the eastern and southern corn belt. So yeah, don't press it. You'll get out there. You'll get it done. We're a little bit behind schedule, but progress to be made. Not necessarily the western corn belt, and late in the week, slightly cooler air and a couple of showers and thunderstorms into the eastern corn belt. Drop off in temperatures, but high pressure, no significant moisture as well for the northern and central plain states areas. Farther south, though, the likelihood of more severe weather across parts of Kansas. 8+ inches of rain over the past week to 10 days centered on Wichita into the Ozarks. Here's the dry time, the hot ridge over the lower Mississippi Valley, and look here is the weather guy says. A little tropical doo-dah, easterly wave into southern Texas. A couple of showers here. The heat and humidity continues as you would expect through the lower Mississippi Valley. Still some scattered strong and severe storm clusters from Oklahoma down into Texas.
Greg, that early week heat, how far east do you expect that to spread?
Probably at least into Ohio, maybe the lower lakes region of New York State and Pennsylvania, and the warmth across the mid-Atlantic region. And this will last several days, mind you, and look at the ridge of high pressure as you get into the tropics. Anything north and west of those tropical currents builds up high pressure here, so we reap the benefits sometimes, and this will certainly help out with planting operations. Here's that weather system, that windy front across the western corn belt. It will slowly move into the Great Lakes region in with a couple of showers and thunderstorms late portion of the week as the heat builds into the Northeast and New England. Here we go with some heat and humidity over the southeastern states. One weak tropical system here, weak low pressure over Oklahoma and Texas, a couple of thunderstorms. This system moves across Florida, rain expected across the Gulf Coast area. We'll see a couple of more showers break out. This is an indicator of what's going to be a busy Atlantic Basin tropical season right here as the heat and humidity and a couple of widely scattered showers and thunderstorms play out from the Tennessee Valley on westward.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, now it's time to look a little longer term at the weather outlook. Greg Solier still here in the studio. Greg, next week, precipitation. Who's going to get what and when?
As the week wears on, getting busier and busier, but this week it's for the upper Midwest, western and northwestern Corn Belt. Last week there was generally some opportunity and a pretty good go of it into the Red River Valley of the North. So you see this area as the week wears on and probably multiple outbreaks of severe weather from the Great Lakes region again. Northern reaches back into the central high plains. Last week, some moisture in some of the worst drought areas, a little more of it unfortunately, in some of these very waterlogged areas of the southeastern plains and southwestern Corn Belt. Note the tropical weather systems. They'll be moving from east to west. A vanguard, an indicator that the season is going to be busy in the Atlantic Basin. No monsoon set up in the southwest for now, and scant quarter to half inch and some higher peak snows into the Pacific Northwest.
Greg, temperature-wise, as you look out to that second week in June, what do you expect to see?
Temperatures are hot, and where soil moisture is even-keeled, you've had it in the ground for a while, all things are good. This is not too shabby here. There's going to be some stress on man and beast with the heat and humidity, mid-90s, feeling like better than 100, but it is June, by the way. So here's the hot weather. The cool to cold weather, still Canadian Prairie into the Pacific Northwest, and that compaction of isobars and air masses means we've got no shortage of moisture across the country, including a little tropical system that will come in off the Gulf into the Rio Grande and northward from there. So more severe, but more rain for parts of the drought areas of the plains. More rain for the Corn Belt, too, especially north and west, right to the east and the southwestern states as well. Good moisture in the Pacific Northwest.
Greg, the week of June 13th, does that above normal heat area continue to grow?
Kind of expands, but sinks south and kind of splits apart here as we get a little troughiness, as we call it, in the weather business right here. This inflection point, this U-shaped configuration that allows some cool air, cold air, despite summertime, southern Canadian Prairie, much above in the southwestern part of the country and southeast, but there's no indication. Usually under this hot ridge here in the southwest, you get the monsoon season going. Dry time for now there into Texas as well. Normal precip in the southeastern states. A busy weather pattern. Pacific Northwest, northern and central Corn Belt points out to the east, into the northeast and New England. There may be still some additional field work and planning delays even into June.
Well, Greg, what are you seeing as June comes to an end?
As we see it right now, a reemergence of the hot weather, and usually that means the tropics here ultimately going to get busy, but here's the hot ridge over the eastern half of the country, a little dip in the jet stream from the plains on westward. Welcome to summertime, astronomically speaking, on the 21st at 4:14 in the morning in the central time zone. And yeah, here are these tropical systems, and they're going to make their way here. Maybe they make a turn to the north and northeast, but look at the busyness with showers and thunderstorms. No shortage of soil moisture across a good part of the Corn Belt heading into mid to late June, and the active weather pattern continues across the Dakotas and Pacific Northwest too.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
It has been rare in the 25 years of my telling you stories about antique farm tractors here on television that I have featured one more than once. But this weekend, this Memorial Day weekend, we make an exception. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store-Lock Tool Cabinets. They proudly say made in the USA. And this weekend especially, Mike Ryan and his team at Store-Lock express appreciation to our military men and women, past and present, as well as our first responders, for all they have done. May this always be a grateful nation to those who have sacrificed for us. Well, it was 7 years ago this spring that I first showed you this tractor. And since then, it's been in magazine articles, it's been on websites, video producers have discovered it, and I thought you should see it a second time because of our observance of Memorial Day this weekend. Our friend Curtis Mabe customized this WD-45. on which he listed the names of those who died in service to our nation from his state alone, North Carolina. It is a striking tribute, and I have noticed on various occasions that the people who look closely at it, viewing those thousands of names, do so in reverence and respect. There at his place, a half hour from Fort Bragg, Curtis Mabe has his own tribute to veterans with his WD-45 at Parkton, North Carolina. Now checking in from the world headquarters of Big Iron Auctions, here's Mark Stock.
Well, Max, we want to wish everybody a very safe and happy Memorial Weekend, and we know a lot of people are out on the boats. If you need a boat, we're going to sell one here on our June 1st sale. Todd Rannells is retiring from Utan, Nebraska. He's got a Shell Lake 15-foot fiberglass fishing boat. It's got a Yamaha 8-horsepower gas motor, something fun to talk about here on Memorial Weekend. They're also selling a Ditch Witch 3610 4x4x4 trencher with only 850 hours. They've got a John Deere 3520 compact utility tractor on their retirement sale. And there's also a 2018 Polaris Ranger 1000 XP UTV that's only got 1,515 miles. Well, Max, this is a big sale here on June the 1st. There's over 2,400 items selling all together. Mahindra has got a nice variety of tractors selling out of their Huntsville, Texas location. Plus, Sizer Thompson Inc. are retiring out of Arthur, Nebraska. They've got a 2018 Caterpillar. It's a 304 E2 mini excavator with only 543 hours. Also selling a 2015 Bobcat T650 compact track loader. This machine has 1,238 hours. They've also got a GMC 6500 flatbed truck with a Smeel hoist and a boom. Well, folks, it's Memorial Weekend. Remember the real reason for Memorial Day. Thank you to all of those service men and women and their families.
Rural America has a proud tradition of answering the call when it comes to serving this country. And then, of course, those folks come back to rural America. Max had a chance to talk with Evan Egan of the Farmer Veteran Coalition about how we can help find more work for veterans in agriculture.
The Farmer Veteran Coalition is a national nonprofit that assists veterans embarking on careers in agriculture. So whether you're just a beginning farmer or you're a veteran who's returning home to a family farm, we help veterans in all walks of life return back to agriculture.
Are you working all over the nation?
Yes, sir. We are all over the nation. We help veterans from all service eras, so whether you're Vietnam or prior, or even just as recently separated as last week. And we do actually help currently serving members as well.
What do you do for that veteran? How do you help them get started?
Yeah, so we have several partnerships around the country. So if you're looking for some beginning farmer training, we can set them up with that. There's veteran farmers who reach out and they want to bring veterans onto their farm and teach them the ropes, teach them that particular type of agriculture. And they even have some farmers who want to sell their farms actually to veterans who can take over operations. Aside from that, we have other programs that can help with farmers launch their businesses through small grants. And other resources like that.
One certainly must respect what a veteran brings because of their experiences. What do they bring to agriculture? How would you characterize what that farmer veteran does for ag?
So they certainly bring a hard work ethic, and I think as many people would know that, agriculture requires that, and veterans have that in spades. What kind of variety of crops do you see veterans growing? All kinds, from beekeeping to row crops. It's really is. There's no limit to the number of crops and things that veterans produce.
So many of us know of veterans personally who've really had a struggle in trying to return from their service for one reason or another. Some have gone through very difficult situations. One could imagine that the work with plants and the work with animals and the kind of productivity that they can bring through farming can not only help produce a crop but help them.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of feedback that we get from veterans is that there's healing or therapeutic effects that they experience from working in ag, whether it's being out in the field with plants or whether it's with working with livestock. Veterans have found a lot of benefits from working in ag.
Thank you, Max. And folks, if you know a veteran who'd like to work in agriculture, visit the Farmer Veteran Coalition's website at farmvetco.org. agribusiness.org. And with that, thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. It is Memorial Day weekend, and there is a lot of pride in this country across rural America. Max put out a call for photos, and as we close out the show, we want you to take a look at some of these amazing images from across rural America. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next week right here.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.